And for those of you who are at home, shame on you. No. No, for those of you at home, I'm going to learn. Oh, where's Taylor? Taylor, do I need my laptop for that? Oh, I didn't bring it down, huh? Okay, thank you. Okay. This hybrid of working with the Zoom and in person. So the people that are in person have a one up on everybody that's on a Zoom because I can see you if you raise your hand. But I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for giving us your attention and time in this experience that we've been going through for the last couple of years. JJPOC is a great committee. It works a lot, and we carry a lot in this position. So I thank you for your dedication and your time. So since we haven't been back here together for a while, I think the most important thing is for us to just remind each other who we are and where we're from so that everybody sort of knows that. So I'm going to ask everybody who is part of the council to introduce themselves and tell us what agency or what program you're working with. And if you're on any of the subcommittees, just name the subcommittees that you're on, okay? So I'm going to ask my co-chair to start.
Thank you very much, Representative Walker, and thank you so much to everyone for attending today's meeting, whether you're here in person or joining virtually. There's a different atmosphere and feeling that's palpable virtually or in person. And as we head into our busy season here, the JJPOC, into the fall and the winter, this is the ideal time for us all to be back together again. I'm Mark Pelka from the Office of Policy Management, Criminal Justice Policy and Planning Division, and welcome everyone.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see everybody's faces in person again. My name is Macklin Roman. I was originally appointed by Senator Kevin Kelly and just recently reappointed by Senator Henry Martin. I'm a former student at University of New Haven, just graduated in May, and happy to be here and listen to these meetings.
Congratulations on your graduation. We're going to learn a lot today about new developments and that have occurred since our last time together. So congrats.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tishawn Bowden-Lewis. Nice to be here. I am the new Chief Public Defender for the state of Connecticut. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. Susan Hamilton with the Public Defender's Office as well. It is really nice to see everybody back in person. I am co-chair with Judge Westbrook on the incarceration work group and a member of the diversion and data sharing work group.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see everybody in person. It's Lisa Sementilli from the Connecticut Department of Labor.
Good afternoon. My name is Hector Glynn with the Village for Family and Children, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the RED working group.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Maricino. I am with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services as the Director of Young Adult Services, and we have representation from my unit on the incarceration work group. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Mulligan, Deputy Commissioner Operations for Department of Correction on behalf of Commissioner Quiros, who is on vacation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Eulalia Garcia, District Administrator and Director of Programs with DOC.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Pierce, currently Deputy Warden at Cheshire CI and soon to be appointed to Warden at NYI. Nice to meet you all.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dawn Westbrook. I am the Chief Administrative Judge of Juvenile Matters for the Judicial Branch, and I am the co-chair of the Incarceration Work Group along with Susan Hamilton. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good afternoon. My name is Vincent Russo. I'm the Director of Government Relations at DCF. I'm here on behalf of Commissioner Durantes today. I believe DCF is on every subcommittee, so just across the board, we're there.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's great to see everybody in person. Again, I'm Bill Carbone. I'm a professor at the University of New Haven, and I'm also Executive Director of the Tau Youth Justice Institute on our campus.
Good afternoon, Erica Nowakowski, the Associate Director of Tau Youth Justice Institute.
Good afternoon, I'm Brittany Lamar. I am the Project Manager of the Juvenile Justice Policy Oversight Committee.
Good afternoon, Brian Hill, Judicial Branch, Co-Chair of the Cross-Agency Data Sharing Work Group.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maurice Reeves. I work at OPM. I'm also the co-chair of the Cross-Agency Data Sharing Work Group.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm Sarah Egan from the Office of the Child Advocate.
Erica Bromley, Juvenile Justice Liaison, Connecticut Youth Services Association, co-chair of Diversion and its related subgroups, and a member of Data Sharing.
Good afternoon. I'm John Frassinelli from the State Department of Education. I'm the director of the Division of School Health, Child Nutrition, and Family Services there.
Good afternoon. I'm Martha Stone, Director of the Center for Children's Advocacy. I'm on the Incarcerations Committee, the RED Committee, and co-chair and actually chair of the Reentry Subcommittee.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Swaggerty. I am a youth advocate with DCF and Center for Children's Advocacy.
Janine Reed, Executive Director, Full Circle Youth Empowerment, and co-chair of the Community Expertise Work Group.
Good afternoon, Ileana Pujos, also co-chair of the Community Expertise Work Group, and I'm the Policy Director at the Connecticut Justice Alliance.
Good afternoon, Christina Quaranta, the Director of the Connecticut Justice Alliance. I sit on the Incarceration Work Group, the Racial and Ethnic Disparity Work Group, and we have an appearance and staff in some way on all of them. Nice to see you all.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gary Roberge with the Judicial Branch, and also just want to let you know, Madam Chair, that Judge Carroll just let me know he's trying to log in with no luck on Teams right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be in person. I am Representative Porter, 94th District of Hampden and New Haven, and I am the Education Subcommittee co-chair.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And I know that there's some other people that are sitting in the back, but we'll try and get everybody introduced. I also want to let everybody know that's out there. It's not in Teams, it's in Zoom. So maybe that's probably why.
Maybe in Zoom, he said he was trying to log in. I assume.
Oh.
You're right, it's always Zoom.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair.
Thank you. And thank you. And I thank so much Representative Walker for a bit of a acknowledgement of the tragedy that occurred in our state last week. I know it's on the minds and of those of us here in the room who do work within the justice system and recognize the risks that are taken by people who do the very dangerous frontline work every day across our state. And I think tomorrow, and I know tomorrow the funeral for her thoughts.
I would just like to say to the families that our hearts are with you. We understand what it's like. We don't understand really. We don't understand what it's like, but we do feel the pain of losing someone, especially people who are so dedicated to their jobs and their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Walker. And I think Sergeant Almonte, Officer Hamzy, and Officer Ayarado, who's the last of whom is recovering from injuries. We'll just have a few moments of silence to think of those officers. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark. At this time, I will turn this over to Erica Nowakowski from the University of New Haven to give us a rundown on what the meeting is going to be about today. Erica?
Thank you, Rep. Walker. Very excited. I'm just very excited to see all the faces here today. Many of you for the past, since I think our last in-person meeting was February 2020. So just been seeing all of your faces on Zoom. So it's exciting to see your faces now here. Just a couple administrative functions. For those members that are on Zoom, if you can please enter your name into the chat. So that we can take attendance. For those that are here in person, we've already taken attendance for you. Another just housekeeping rule, if you have your laptop here, you can go ahead and log on into Zoom, mute yourself, as well as turn your volume off on your laptop. Thank you. So very excited to have two presentations this afternoon. One of them will be led by the Judicial Branch Court Support Services, Brian Hill and Brian Sperry. And this particular presentation is focused on a request that was made by many of the members here of the JJPOC. You might have heard us talk a few months back on a request for a data pulse check of the juvenile justice system, and that in the future, we will also be spotlighting several state agencies or nonprofit providers or interventions and services. And so today, the Judicial Branch has provided a presentation that I think is going to be very comprehensive and robust, though I thank you, Brian Hill and Brian Sperry. The conversation was a glimpse or a preview because we know that in the future there will be more comprehensive information, but I think they did a great job of getting us started. You will also hear an update from the Office of Policy and Management, Maurice Reeves and his team. They will be giving a presentation on the equity dashboard. This was, again, we've done presentations in the past, brief presentations on the equity dashboard. This was an initiative that came out of the IOU's task force, and really excited to see the progress that has been made on this website or database that will be accessible to us in the future. But now I'm going to give the floor back to Rep. Walker and Secretary Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. Did everybody get a copy of the minutes from the last meeting? Are there any corrections for the minutes for the last meeting? May I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? It's been moved by Representative Porter. May I have a second? It's been seconded by Gary Roberge. So I ask that all people, if you have any other comments or anything about it, please talk to Susan later on if there are any things, but may I have a motion, may I have one unanimous vote to accept the minutes today? Aye. Thank you. Next, we got an introduction to someone who is joining us, a new member from the Public Defender's Office. Tashawn is a criminal defense attorney and the Chief Public Defender for the State of Connecticut Division of Public Defender Services. She has worked for the Division of Public Defender Services for 25 years. You don't look that old. Tashawn is also an associate professor at Post University in Waterbury. She has served on an advisory board for the local Connecticut high school. She has also worked on several boards and ensured the troubled youth and their families receive the services that address the mind, body, and the spirit. Tashawn has chaired a local grassroots organization focused on racial equity in her community. She facilitates workshops and seminars for at-risk youth and young women throughout Fairfield County, Connecticut. She is also a mentor and commits countless hours volunteering with youth and young adults. We welcome you to our committee. Thank you for joining us and giving us your expertise. Thank you. Mark.
I had the great pleasure of getting to know the Chief Public Defender through some earlier sessions, including the Motley session on racial disparities and efforts around improving outcomes within prosecution. And it's been such a thrill to get to know her. And I've learned so much from every interaction that I've had with her. And I am so eager for the knowledge and experience she'll bring to the JJPOC. Benefited over many years from Susan Hamilton's contributions and other leaders in the Defender's Office. So thank you. We received word, you may have got a preview of the news I'm about to share earlier, that Warden Malden has announced his retirement to the Department of Correction. And this follows a career in service within the department across multiple facilities and multiple levels and lines that he filled. And I believe he's been warden and a member of the JJPOC for over 2 years now. I remember when he first started, I believe in 2020. And as you all know, he was someone who participated actively in the committee, as well as his leadership staff and deputy wardens. And many of us have had an opportunity to visit the facility and interact with him and bring our concerns and questions and vision and priorities before him. And I know he worked incredibly hard in his role. And I personally found it to be an enormous pleasure to work with. And I'm grateful for his service. We wish he could have been with us today, but he has a commitment that's out of state. Although I believe we have some good news that will come to follow on from this news I just shared regarding his retirement and stepping down from the JJPOC. So with that, I'd like to turn to Deputy Warden Mulligan, who I believe may have some news to share about the future of MYI and its leadership.
Thank you, Mark. So Mike already introduced himself, but I first wanted to echo Mark's sentiments and gratitude to Derek and his team for the work they've done at Manson since he's been there. It's a difficult placement. It's unique to our agency. So finding someone to fill his rather large, very large shoes was difficult. But I'm happy to introduce Michael Pierce, as he's been appointed as warden to replace Derek on November 1st, excuse me. Typically, we do these announcements kind of quick and make a quick transition, but given the nature of this assignment and all the stakeholders that are involved, we did so a little bit early. So that Mike would have an opportunity to spend some time with Derek and get acclimated as to who the stakeholders are, many of which are in the room today. So I look forward to a bright future for him and the team at Manson, and Godspeed.
Welcome, and thank you for joining our JJPOC. We look forward to working with you, and I can't wait to see all the things that you can add to us. I will say that Warden Mulder was someone who really actively worked with everything that we did. So I look forward to working with you in that position. Thank you.
I would second those thoughts, Dep Warden. I'll call you that. Maybe the last time I call you Deputy Warden before our next meeting, when I'll be calling you Warden. But thank you. I know this is an active group that brings intensive work to all of its meetings, and we benefited so immensely from MYI's top leadership. I just was hearing about the ongoing work on some of the work groups preparing for policy options for next session, and was hearing about all the great work that deputy wardens at MYI are contributing to that effort. And so thank you so much for stepping up to this role. Deputy Commissioner stressed for me in the hallway that he saw you thrive and grow and rise up in the department. And as he said, this is a very challenging position to lead on in the department, and you were selected for a reason, and we are so excited to be working with you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe we have one other new member that has joined our our council. At this point, Hector Glenn will introduce the person that has joined. Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce Thea Montanez. She is the Chief Operating Officer for the City of Hartford. I don't know, Thea, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Hector. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you. My name is Thea Montanez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the City of Hartford. As part of my responsibilities and supporting Mayor Bronin and managing the day-to-day operations of the City of Hartford, during the past several years, I have also managed the work to support the needs of justice-involved young people and adults along with their families. So I very much look forward to working with all of you to better support the needs of those persons, those young people especially that are justice involved. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your dedicated work, and we look forward to working with you on our committees. You can see that our committee is growing and adding more talent and resources for kids to help our kids thrive in the communities and in the services that we provide here at JJPOC. So next, I'd like to introduce our community expert work group from Connecticut Justice Alliance, Ileana. Next, from Full Circle, Albert Dancy. There we go. Then from CCA, Jackie Swaggerty, our new young one. Gordon Grant. Gordon, are you with us? Or are you on Zoom? Blanca Morales. And Naomi Lockhart. Not here. Okay, thank you. And Katharina Soto. Katharina? She's over there. Oh, there she is. Okay, great. Welcome, welcome. We're glad that you're here and participating, and let us know if you think we're doing right, and if we please speak up, okay? Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I know that we spent a lot of time doing introductions, but it's important for everybody to understand the expertise that we have in this council and how hard we will be working on specific issues that we all know and love. So now, going into the agenda we have today, the systems data presentation, the cross-agency data sharing work group chairs, judicial branch, and court-supported services division. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, Undersecretary Pelka. Thank you. It's great to be here in person. I said to my co-chair of cross-agency data sharing, it's nice to meet you in person. We have not met each other in person, and so it is wonderful to see everyone. I'm simply doing a quick introduction to our presenters this afternoon. Just by way of background, since 2015, each year of this committee, the data sharing work group has done a presentation typically in October, November, or December on system data, reporting on various strategic plan goals and outcomes. This year, we're responding to a specific request, as Erica mentioned earlier, to do a pulse check of the system, provide some high-level system information, and then follow that up with an update on a very important project that our work group has been working on through the leadership of the Office of Policy and Management, and that's on the equity dashboard. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brian Sperry, who's a Deputy Director within the Court Support Services Division of the Judicial Branch, and he's going to walk us through the first part of our presentation this afternoon. I do have one question for the co-chairs. Would you prefer questions to come after each section or wait until the end?
After each section would be preferable.
We will pause to do that before we transition speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Rep. Walker and Undersecretary Pelka, members of the committee. As Brian said, my name is Brian Sperry. I'm a Deputy Director of Information Technology at the Court Support Services Division of the Judicial Branch. We're here today and are very excited to show some information about changes that have come to the juvenile justice system over the last few years. It's been a pretty dynamic few years, right? We've the juvenile justice system in Connecticut, constantly changes and evolves. Been a lot of efforts to reduce the number of youth in the system through diversion and other efforts, and then we've seen the COVID-19 pandemic really kind of have enormous impact on justice systems all over the country as well as in Connecticut. So we're here today to take a look at some of that. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So we'll be looking at some kind of high level view of data across the various decision points that exist in juvenile justice. We're going to be looking at data quarterly from 2017 through to the end of Q3 in 2022. Quarterly data is really kind of tells the best story. Is a really kind of a good mix in between, kind of too much detail and not enough. If we were to look at this in annual numbers, it's really going to kind of blur out and kind of mask some of the changes that we've seen. And again, this is just intended to provide some pretty basic context to stakeholders. So we'll start with court referrals. These are going to be delinquent quarterly delinquent referrals to the juvenile court. So what we can see here, we've got quarterly data going back to 2017, and the reduction starting in Q2 of 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic kicked in is very apparent. And we can see that we dropped from typically about 2,000 referrals in any given quarter to under 1,000 referrals. So the system immediately fell in half. And while there has been some rebound, I'd like to point out that we are still down and really only seeing about 1,500 referrals per calendar quarter. A good way to look at take a look at this comparison is to take a look at quarter 3 in 2019, which was the first, the kind of high point before the pandemic, and compare that with our most recent quarter. And we can see that, here when we making this comparison, that really the system is down 30% from, kind of the pre-pandemic era. So we've seen, the system has shrank from, in about 30%. One piece of information that I don't have in a slide today, but I did want to bring up here, is a little bit of information on racial and ethnic disparity. Oftentimes when a system contracts, it can become more non-white, but we did not see that in this, during this period of time. In fact, the system became a little bit less black and brown and a little bit more white. So, that's an interesting nuance that we're really excited to be able to take a deeper look at in future presentations. To further look at delinquent referrals, we wanted to be able to take a look at the charge types. So the mix of offenses has changed since COVID-19 really kind of took hold. We've seen that the majority of the reduction in delinquent referrals has been of misdemeanors. So misdemeanors are down, 36% from pre-pandemic levels. Felonies have remained relatively even. So even as the system has contracted, the majority of those changes have come from the lower level crimes and misdemeanors that we would see. The impact on the system has been that while the system is smaller, it is a little bit riskier and a little bit more severe. So we can see that with those misdemeanors falling out of the bottom of the system, that the overall picture of the system, the proportion of the system that is, represents, felony referrals has increased, from about 27% to 39%, almost 40% during this period of time. So the system is smaller. It is a little bit more intense. We've reviewed the most common offenses with this group in the past, and we'll do so here as well. These are the top 10 charges in the first 3 quarters of 2017 as compared to the first 3 quarters of 2022. And what should be familiar to most is that the most common offenses are kind of conduct-based misdemeanors. We see breach of peace, assault third, disorderly conduct, larceny 6 as those most common offenses. And that holds true, from 2017 to 2022. What we do see here are a couple of interesting things. One is that the overall numbers have reduced, right? So when we look at, breach of peace has gone from 852 to 649 referrals. And really in all of these categories, we've seen some reductions as the system gets smaller. One area that is a little bit important to draw focus to is the increase in larceny 1 and 2 charges. We have seen that increase from frankly ranked 11th and 12th in 2017, but we do see larceny 1 and 2 creep up to 4 and 7 respectively. Those numbers are still still under where they were pre or during the first 3 quarters of 2017. Wanted to focus in a little bit more on delinquent referrals involving motor vehicle theft. This committee has certainly received a number of presentations about motor vehicle theft. Just as a reminder, the judicial branch captures information on court referrals that involve motor vehicle theft, and we track that at the court referral level. So we started collecting that information in I believe May of 2018, and this is the entire universe of data that we have. So a little bit less than 2017 to 2022. But what we can see is that while we did see a spike, during the COVID-19 pandemic, that we've been on a downward trend in terms of court referrals for a period of time now. Q3 in 2022 is down, 9% from, where we were back pre-pandemic. And it should be noted that this data, as all of this information is has a seasonal nature to it. Very frequently, Q3 is the most, it's summertime. It really typically generates the largest number of referrals. Another special population we wanted to be able to look at is the number of school-related referrals to court. So here we're showing 5 years worth of school-related incident data. And we can see, COVID-19 kind of affect those numbers in 2019. We level off. We had very few school-related referrals while school was primarily remote during school year 21, and an increase back to kind of reversion to the mean in 2020, school year 2022. So we did see 1,744 school-related referrals during that period of time. The same reductions, or the COVID-19 certainly had the same impact on predisposition detention admissions as it did in other areas of the system. We can see the stark drop in these referrals, and the difference between where we were in 2023 or 2022 and 2017 really remains. The number of predisposition detention admissions in 2022 is down 34% from where it was, in a pre-pandemic state. So continuing to get smaller. Interestingly, even as the system, has contracted and risk and severity has increased a little bit, we still do see these reductions in detention admissions. When it comes to open court cases on any given day, the total number of youth involved in the juvenile justice system, whether it be in an intake phase or in a supervision phase, is again lower in 2022 than it has been, in kind of pre-pandemic eras. This chart looks at the average quarterly, says juvenile probation population, but it's really both the court, the intake side, so predisposition cases pending in court, as well as post-disposition supervision by probation. And we can see that these numbers, again, are down 21% from pre-pandemic years. Again, if we're going to make this Q3 to Q3 comparison, the predisposition cases are down 13%, and post-adjudicatory supervision is down 31%. So, again, the system, more evidence of the system being, significantly smaller than it was pre-pandemic. Next chart here really illustrates the changes in the risk of the population that has been disposed to, probation supervision. This is a disaggregation of those same population numbers based on their risk identified via the PREDICT risk assessment. It's a 5-tier system, and with tier 5 being the most, the riskiest cohort. And we can see that, while the system, while the population, contracted and then has grown again, we're still not back up to where, where those numbers were. And there are more, tiers 3, 4, and 5 youth in the system, fewer low risk kids on supervision than there were prior to the pandemic. The result of that is that, and again, the the proportion of kids who are going to be tiers 3, 4, and 5 has increased. So we do see that change from about 55% being tiers 3, 4, and 5 in the most recent quarters to being upwards of 70% tiers 3, 4, and 5. So again, smaller system, more intense system. We wanted to take a look at probation with residential placement. This chart represents the number of court order events. So these are instances where youth are being disposed to probation with residential placement heading to the region's program. For a number of years now, we've seen the number of court order events, remain below 20 per quarter. And this really remained low since right at about the pandemic there. So, we're putting fewer of those kids, through the residential placement system as well. With regard to treatment and services that youth are receiving, we wanted to take a look at the top 10 most common program referrals. We're looking in 2019 here and comparing to 2022. We can see that LINK, is going to be our most commonly utilized program model, followed up by MST, and then we can see some other other programs that that fill in the gaps here. There is an omission that I wanted to point out here. It was brought to our attention that education support services was left off of this chart, so I apologize for that. I do want to point out that those referrals were 172 in 2019 and 320 in 2022. So there are more youth receiving education support services in in 22. Both as a raw number and as a percentage of the total.
What was the number? I'm sorry, would you go back? What was the number for 2019 for educational support services?
It was 172.
Okay, thank you.
And 320 in 22. Taking a look, at a few measures of outcome. Here is a sort of a success measure here. We wanted to look at clients who are completing their periods of probation supervision without rearrest. And, these numbers move around a little bit when you look at them on a quarterly basis like this, but we can see that, these kids are able to remain arrest-free at between 75 and 80% during their periods of probation. And that's remained pretty consistent through pandemics and reforms and things like that. So, we're pretty happy that, these kids are are able to remain arrest-free during their period of probation. In taking a look at recidivism, we pulled up a 12-month rearrest rate by supervision risk level. So these are going to be youth on supervised probation, assessed for risk via the PREDICT instrument, and taking a look at where how well they're doing 1 year out from their probation start. We can see that, again, this is really illustrates that our system, while a little bit smaller, is a little bit riskier. We do see our tiers 3, 4, and 5 kids who are recidivating a little bit higher than the lower risk kids, and at the same time, those lower risk populations are shrinking. So this is a tough measure for us to look at because with the system becoming smaller and the youth becoming a little bit riskier, a binary variable of recidivism, a yes no, isn't starts to may not be the best measure for recidivism. So we've been putting in some work to change and adapt the way that we look at rearrest and move towards more of a desistance model, where we hope to be able to sort of measure time to recidivism and also severity of offense. So we're very interested in what kids are doing as they're coming into the court, as they are receiving interventions. What are they what does their behavior then look like after involvement with the juvenile justice system? So do we see reductions in severity of offense? Do we see longer timelines before rearrest? We really need to be able to take a deeper look at that to be able to get some more answers. And we're working on that now. And it's going to be it's a complex process, and we're working through some measurements, and we hope to have more in the future on that. A slide here takes a look at 12-month adjudication rates. So for the same cohorts, how many of these clients are going to be re-adjudicated in court within that 12-month period? And we can see that while the arrest rates are relatively high, the adjudication rates do come down, and even the most risky populations end up with a rate that is at or below 50%, with our less risky kids kind of really coming in below 1 in 5 in terms of being adjudicated for a new offense within that year. So that was a lot. We have questions.
If you have questions, please just raise your hand. Sorry. Please just raise your hand so that we can see you. And if you have questions from the people who are on Zoom, I will also go notice them. So I'm going to start with Representative Nolan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to make it through Zoom. I had a last minute personal issue. I had to stay in New London. But thank you for that presentation. I thought it was very well displayed. The numbers, I think, are awesome for some of the things that are being said in regards to our kids in the last few years. Question is, how are we going to educate the community on these numbers? Is this something that we have lined up? That would be my first question.
Thank you.
Sure. So, and you'll see, later in this presentation, we will be, taking a look at progress being made on the equity dashboard, which is designed to be a public look at, juvenile justice, system points and being able to be disaggregated, not just by race and ethnicity, but also, over time, over geography, over some other pertinent, pertinent factors to those, to whatever data we're really looking at. So that's really going to be, an exciting development. And I know have been some discussions about, some webinars or other public venues to be able to discuss some of this information as well.
Thank you. Representative Nolan, any other questions?
Not a question, but I just want to say, I just really hope that we can simplify it as much as possible for many of us that have been working on things as such. To read that is something that we might be able to understand, but I want to make sure that our community understands it. So I'm hoping that we can really simplify it enough so that even our youth can understand the displays that we just saw. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Just a quick question. Your program referral data that you put up, the top line was linking youth to natural communities. I know that within that program, other programs exist. If I'm looking at something like MDFT, is that number inclusive of people who might have gotten MDFT through linking youth to natural communities, or is it just a direct referral number?
That's a good question. The MDFT number that you would see on there would be a direct referral. So there will be youth that will receive, other interventions through the LINK program. Those numbers do kind of hide within that larger number.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha?
So thank you for the presentation.
Martha, could you speak into the mic a little bit more? Thank you.
Sure. Is there a way to delineate the program referrals, first of all, and is there a way to correlate the program referrals with your recidivism chart?
So first of all, we can definitely, we do have some additional information into what the other is going to be. And we do have this information at the individual level. So we could take a look at, what those outcomes are. I would caution with the very low numbers that we're looking at, though, it's going to be hard to draw some conclusions, again, with a binary recidivism variable of yes or no. But we could definitely, that's definitely something that is possible.
Martha, are you good? Okay, thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, Martha had a similar question, but a little bit different. My question was, is there an overlay between the program referrals and the risk levels?
That's definitely some information that we could provide. There are some guidelines that recommend how we align youth with with the programs, and we could definitely take a look at how those line up.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Erica.
Oh, thank you, Rep. Walker. I just wanted to respond to Representative Nolan's request about making this information public. Brian Sperry did mention a webinar that we are actually in the process of putting together, and we were hoping to get this information today so that we can utilize some of this information moving forward. So stay tuned for more information on how we're going to be communicating this information out to the community and public at large.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, Gwen? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Ileana? Okay.
Related to the 2019 and 2020 numbers for the referrals, you said it wasn't on the list for for the education services. Can you get that to us? Because I'm wondering, are we working with the social workers on this? Because I know you said sometimes the numbers could be smaller where you can't get necessarily some conclusions, but we can look for trends, right? And so that way then we can pivot sooner than later. Because I was on the education call yesterday for JPOC, and we were talking about school safety. And then I had a meeting with the commissioner's office later on, And we were really still talking apples to oranges. So I'm wondering, are we streamlining even in our communication? So that's number one. And number two, as it relates to the working with communities and families, we really have to focus on strengthening families, because once these children exit the systems, they're going back to somewhere. I think it's important that we remember that. And so it's great that we have the webinars, but we're also in holiday seasons. And if you talk to social workers and the times and the climates, right? So utilize the community programs, utilize the things that are happening during this season to talk about JPOC. It's very important because kids are coming home with new items and they're saying, oh, this is my friend's. And my kid came home with something. I emptied all closets. I had code red. We were all through everything. And if you ain't bought it and I ain't bought it, it went back. You know, and so parents are, and I get it, parents are going through things, but there must be communication with these families. So we must work to strengthen them so that they can help us. This is not us and versus them, and it's not just your responsibility or JBox. It is all of ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Ileana, no, I'm sorry, go ahead. Christina, yeah.
I have a few questions. I think the first one is, can we have the information on the young person's race and ethnicity? I know you said the slide wasn't in there. I think that's important to know what it is, how people identify. The three more questions. The second would be, I think, what were we doing different as a system differently in the height of the pandemic, since the numbers were so much lower, and how do we maintain that? It doesn't look like we have. It necessarily hasn't jumped back up to 2018 or 19, but that's a question. And then in terms of slides 21, or at least pages 21 and 22, the question there is, what type of programming change, intervention change will the system look at, and can we talk with young people and families about what they needed differently? Because the rearrest rate on page 21, going from 61.5% up to 90%, isn't acceptable. And the same with on page 22, when we look at the adjudication rate jumping. I know it's only 50%, but that's still 50%. So those kids are not being served. They're missing something in the service. And I mean, you could point out all the levels, all of the different colors, red, orange, yellow, and the two greens. So I think that question should be asked. And then if we could see a slide breakdown on gender, I don't know if you've gotten there yet, or how kids are identifying. That would be helpful too, and what programs they were matched with.
So we could definitely provide some additional information that speaks more to the demographics. In terms of system changes, I mean, I think that's I know we've got some we're looking to use this data and other data to be able to really identify what went on during the pandemic. I think that's sort of the system. I mean, all of society really kind of came to a halt, and obviously we've been rebounding, but it'll be upon all of us to really take a look at how our various systems responded to that. And as for the recidivism information, we can definitely take a little bit deeper of a look at that, and we do have some coming attractions later on this year where we'll be able to provide some more deep dives on this information.
And just one follow-up question. I think when we look at rearrest and kids being adjudicated after a period of placement, whether it's in regions or on probation or seeing detention for a period of time, since it is such a small number of kids, will there ever be an attempt to actually open the folder and see what did we do from A to B? It would be great if we can go back to birth, but to see, what system where went wrong, what could we have done differently so we're not repeating the same mistakes, right? And maybe having those conversations, if not directly with the child and family, but at least other community members of, hey, how can we better serve you?
Thank you.
Mr. Carbone?
So I think this report is an excellent report, and it really should give the JPOC considerable encouragement about the work that you were doing. Last year in the strategic plan, the 3-year plan that was adopted, there was goal 5 that said we were going to continue to work on shrinking the system. And by all accounts, from all the reports that we're seeing, everything's going down. Arrest, referrals to court, number of kids in detention, number of kids that ultimately make their way to the probation system, number of kids in the out-of-home placements. So it's all moving in the right direction, and I think the committee really should take some pride in that. The one thing I hope we can talk about more is while the population is shrinking in probation, it's clearly moving up in terms of severity. And maybe we just haven't found the right program model for dealing with these kids. I appreciate what Brian said that, you know, the measurement of recidivism, yes or no, may not be the only way that we should look at that. And I would agree. But it troubles me a little that there's this group of kids and we don't have the right fit for them. And we continue to see with this group, despite the best of efforts, very high recidivism rates. And I would hope we could make that the focus of our efforts. They're a small group, but man, they could cause a lot of problems. And if we don't address it, we're giving up on them. And I wouldn't want to see us give up. And I think, in a sense, we need to worry together. And are there models out there elsewhere where people have looked at these risk levels and found some solutions that we may not be aware of? So despite all the great things that are in this report, and I really commend CSSD and the other agencies that are working on it, we really need to focus on that as a committee and not give up on those kids.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Hi. So I wanted to say it was a really good presentation. My question is not really a question, more of a statement before my question. I think, you know, to answer your point, it is a little bit difficult for you all to know what's going on. But then there does need to be a space where youth are able to tell you exactly what they need the way they want to. And also the issue isn't the lack of programs, it's the lack of money being given to these families and youth. You know, they do have a lot of issues. There are a lot of things that are not being taken care of. And money is going to places, not to say that you guys aren't doing what you need to do, but money is going to places of, you know, where I live in Hartford, so the cities and the streets, and there isn't that many youth and our piece of the pie, or our youth advocacy centers, or even, you know, community centers that are in the center of in the city of Hartford.
Thank you. Gary, and then Representative Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to thank Brian for the presentation. Thank you. Excellent job as always. And we're lucky to have Brian on our team in the branch. And I look around the table and I think 80 or 85% of us have asked Brian and his shop to produce data for this group or other groups like this. So thank you, Brian, for the work that you and the BI unit do. And Bill, I agree, right? We should take a look at the higher risk kids here and what can we do differently. And it's not different on the adult side either, right? We see our young offenders on the adult side, 18 to 24-year-old. 24 months out in probation supervision, recidivating at 75%. And our overall recidivism rate on the adult side is 36%, right? So we have to take a look at it across the board, certainly here in JPOC and the juvenile system, and then also how does that carry over, right? So I think it's something that we all really have to take a close look at.
Rep. Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, thank you, Brian, for this awesome presentation. A lot of good information. And I just really want to kind of piggyback off of what we've already heard, excuse me, around slide number 21, because that does concern me. We keep saying that the population is smaller, but it's riskier and it's more intense. So my question is, because of what Brian just said, didn't even think about the adult side, Gary. The fact that it's not just it's not just a youth, but as they transition out of the youth into adult. So what are we doing around ACEs, right? Adverse childhood experiences. Are we scoring these kids? Are we looking at their trauma, what they're dealing with, and then coming up with solutions to address the root cause? Because for me, it's always the symptoms that we look at and we try to, put a Band-Aid on it, get them a little further, move them along, but they're going to slide back if we are not dealing with what's happening at the root. And it is the trauma. It is certainly the trauma. And I know that there are programs that we have. One that comes to mind is Miss Kendra's in New Haven. They do a lot of work around this with young children in elementary schools, and they have seen a decrease of up to 95% of the school disciplines that are happening in the schools where they are. So I think we really need to take a good hard look at, requiring ACEs and scoring these kids so that we can actually address what's really going on.
Christina?
I'd just like to quickly add one more point. When we talk about rearrest and what it means for older folks, emerging adults, as Director Robert just pointed out on the adult system, around this table, we've had the conversation for many years about removing young people from the Department of Corrections and what that looks like, and that young people should not be in adult prison. There's about 25 to 29 other states in the United States of America that don't have a child in their adult prison. They figured it out. So around the table, while we look at these numbers, we should also think about what does that mean for folks when they turn 18, right? A switch doesn't go off and we don't change. You're still the same person, especially if you're going back to the same neighborhood, home, community, which we all are, A birthday doesn't mean much more than you got a little bit older. So around the table, while we all might not want to address that issue of what are we going to do to get young people out of adult prison, it's time. I wanted to bring that up now.
Robin?
Thank you for a second time. I forgot to ask a question on slide number 13, where we're talking about the running total of school-related incidents by school year. What exactly school-related incidents are included in this graph? Thank you.
Thank you. So the school-related incidents, as we identify them, are any type of an event that occurs, on school grounds, or involved in a some sort of like a school activity. So our probation supervisors, as they're reading police reports and determining, the handling on when these cases, when these referrals come to court, are making determinations as to whether or not the referral, is school related. So that's really, it's essentially the source of the, kind of where the behavior is occurring.
But can we name it? I mean, that's what I'm asking for, to name it. What is it?
Do you mean the types of offenses
Yes.
that are coming? Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sarah for the second time.
Yeah, thank you. First, I just wanted to say that it's also a very good presentation. I didn't say that before, which it is. But I think, Bill, you really just hit the nail on the head in terms of what I'm thinking about. And I think we've been talking about that for a while now, right? It's the kids who have the highest risk, and to Representative Porter's point, the highest level of need, probably the likeliest exposure. I mean, every time we profile the kids who enter our adult prison system, and now we, by statute, look at the 18 to 21s, I mean, it's just, oh my, there's just so much happening for these youth. And until we get at that level of need that they have, for everything, for housing, for financial support, for a sense of future, for educational accomplishment, et cetera, I think we're going to struggle to resolve that. So I really wanted to echo that, because I do think that that's central here, and a big takeaway in the data. It's part of why I asked that question about the overlay between the risk and where kids are going, and part of why I badger about like the Regions program, but really because in concept I get it, but it's like, what are we sort of seeing in terms of what's working, what's having the most impact for these youth while they're there, and then longitudinally, I think is an area we should really prioritize digging in. But I did want to piggyback on the everything sort of dipped way down, right, and has sort of stayed down, except for, and you pointed it out, those school-based arrests. And so I just wanted to draw a circle around that, because I think I even wonder, where are we going to see that a year from now? Is it possible that climbs up over where we started? I think everybody around this table hears from school folks, superintendents, et cetera, who feel overwhelmed by the level of need. And I think in many districts, look, still respond to it with making a referral to your shop, right? And when I look at that list of charges that you have, the 4 misdemeanors, 1 felony, I think in the top 5, you know, I'd be curious to see what the dispositions are for that. I mean, our office tracks, and thank you to CSSD for providing it to us, but the 12 and under arrests, for example, and the charges are all over the map, but the dispositions are like, you know, they're mostly gotten rid of, right? So, and those are the school-based arrests. So I just didn't know if there was any comment, if you had any comment about what you're seeing on the school-based side in terms of the nature of the referrals, and what, you know, not to over expand the conversation, but what are your thoughts about how we can help school districts divert their kids out away from your system, particularly, you know, particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's, you know, it's a very important point. You know, the fact that those school, you know, that the school related incidents didn't reduce kind of really tells us that, you know, it hints at, you know, reductions elsewhere in the system, you know, but does still, you know, drive a lot of volume into the, you know, into the courts. So that's definitely, we'll take, you know, we do have, you know, some more data that we can take a look at and dig deeper, and we'll present some more information, you know, in the months to come.
Before I go to somebody else, I just want to ask a couple of questions just on that. So I looked at slide 16. And these are the quarterly juvenile probation supervision population. Now, if we're going to say that the arrest situations with the schools is kind of consistently high, but yet in probation, it drops down dramatically in 2020, and then it's starting to go up. Do we have any ideas on why that happened?
Not at this point. I mean, I think we'd have to take a, you know, again, to take a closer look at the relationship between those school-based arrests and sort of what those dispositions.
No, but on the probation, I'm just focusing on the probation side. Slide 16.
Yeah.
There's a major drop right in second quarter. I can't see. Third quarter, 2020.
Yep.
Ah, there it is. It's on the screen. Thank you. Much better numbers. I mean, visually. There's a major drop, and then it starts to go back up, and it's continually going back up. Do we know why?
So we, you know, we do know that the, you know, the drop was COVID related, right? So there
Okay.
were,
So when we say COVID related,
yeah.
were we doing probation differently at that point? So during that time we weren't doing face to face. We were doing telecommunication. So then it started to go back up as we started going back. So I'm assuming everybody's back into full swing in probation now. So now that we're full swing in probation, the numbers are going up. Have we looked at that?
Yeah. So you know, when you know, in the midst of COVID, you know, the number of court referrals was very small, and you know, it takes, you know, a period of time for a case to adjudicate in court and be disposed to probation. So during that period of time, you know, very few, you know, relatively few cases were being disposed to probation. Volume had, you know, kind of dried up in terms of referral volume in the courts, and you know, youth were wrapping up their periods of probation. So, you know, the system naturally shrank, you know, during the probation portion of the population naturally shrank during that time. You know, as, you know, more normal court operations resumed and, you know, court referrals began to rise again, more youth were being you know, disposed to probation. So we see that volume kind of return more naturally.
I just would like to get a little bit more detail because I have some ideas, but I want to know exactly what was going on during that time. And my other question, I'll shut up. I'll let you guys. I'll shut up. Gwen.
So if I look at this from the Strengthening Families and Solutions, so Connecticut Parents Union, we did a training back in June, and we had Sergeant Wilson come from Bridgeport. And he was talking about, you know, he was late coming in because he just took guns off of a child as young as 10. You understand? We are in a crisis. We are on national news for our fights. But yet I'm sitting on a meeting yesterday where we have this lady named Miss Witherspoon, who I guess is from the Connecticut Safe Schools something. And she's supposed to be working with the schools around safety plans because we have reports due November 1st to Homeland Security. But yet she's saying she can't reach the superintendents, right? And so then when I talk to the State Department of Education, then they're saying, well, some things are non-regulatory, that the guidelines, look, everything is regulatory when these kids are dying. Right? So we have to figure out streamline. So that's number one, listening to the officers, because I get we have issues of disproportionate suspensions and expulsions and SROs, but many of these officers have relationships with these children. And Sergeant Wilson said he remembered recently just a guy is about to do 20 years, a student of his. And that student looked at him while he was being handcuffed and said, is there anything you can do? And he's like, I talked to you all these years, but now you're gonna have to face the consequences of the choices. So I would recommend one solution is we get these PSAs back. And I'm gonna keep harping this. I said this to Commissioner Russell. Tucker, back in the days, 10 o'clock, do you know where your kids are? We thought that's just a soundbite. It's helping families to strengthen and remind them, right? It's 3 o'clock, you're still at work. Is your child really at the after school program? And we can do 3 PSAs. It's 9 o'clock, do you know where your child is? People say they know, but I go to the Meriden Mall and those kids are in the parking lot at 9 o'clock on their skateboards, right? These are some real things. Doesn't mean mom and dad doesn't care. They're trying to survive, but that's where all of us come in. So that's number one, working with law enforcement, working with the people on the ground. They said there used to be gang resistance programs, he mentioned, that are no longer there, right? Education, resistance, education, advocacy. Some, to the young lady's point from Hartford, there are things that don't no longer exist. And it's hard to hear that when we got historical amounts of money have poured in through the COVID. So that's number one. Last thing I would say is we have to get a handle on the safety because it's impacting the work of the educators to get the kids into schools. Because you can't have this type of fight and then be shocked that mom's not sending them. And then you're going to call child welfare because mom's not sending them, right? So that ripple effect happens because we're not focusing on the safety element. So all I'm saying is forget whether it's regulatory or non-regulatory. We need to get to these superintendents or delegations and saying, how can we help you with your safety plans? Because it is impacting parents sending their kids to school. And then the last thing, I would say is, I'm gonna say it again, PSAs. Let's just try it. At this point, let's just try it to help families remind them that they need to know where their children are. Yes, we love you, children, and we do trust you. Ain't nothing wrong with checks and balances, okay? Nothing wrong with them. I'm just saying, and thank you, Representative, let me share.
Thank you. Yes, John.
Thanks, John Frassinelli. Can I just clarify a couple of things? First of all, the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection collects the school safety and security plans, and those have been in place for about 10 years. And Gwen, we had this conversation yesterday, right? So what I just want to clarify is the districts are preparing those plans. They prepare them every year. They're due in November. A couple of years ago, we worked with the Department of Emergency Services to include a mental health annex to that security plan to talk about how we're supporting mental health. So the organization that Ms. Samuels was referring to is an organization that got a private grant to support this work. So I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that the districts don't want the help, but this is just a beginning of the process to if districts want assistance in those plans, then there is some assistance there. So we're making those connections. I just wanted to clarify that. Also, with regard to the funding that's out there, there's close to $40 million now in after school funding and in enrichment programs, innovation programs. There's an additional $10 million out for summer programs. The legislature just approved another $28 million that we're putting out on to districts to support the onboarding of school mental health service workers, including school counselors, social workers, licensed marriage and family therapists, a whole host of folks. And as someone brought up before, trauma specialists are part of that funding as well. An additional $12 million is going to go out to the RESCs, the Regional Education Service Centers, to support the hiring of trauma specialists to do what you're talking about, is work with kids who are have adverse childhood experiences early on, so that we can stem the tide at the beginning.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say to highlight, there is a big drop in, I think, of all of your numbers during COVID, the 2020, and it's because we were stuck in the house. we couldn't go nowhere. And one thing I want to say is, we want our youth to go back to school and to do everything the way that it was before. But walking through my own high school, it's not the same because the children are not the same. During the 2 years that we were in quarantine, there was a lot of mishaps with different offices, and it wasn't your fault, but a lot of us did get lost in the cracks. And there are a lot of youth that I speak to personally, some of my friends and just youth I work with personally, that are struggling and want to be heard, but it's hard to trust the people at the top when our schools are not the way they were. Walking through our hallways, they're not as fun and as lighting as they used to be, and it's because you want us to sit in a room the same way we were sitting in a room for 2 years on a computer, and then you want us to come back and do paperwork and computer work. But I want to go outside and I want to see what's outside in the world, because during the 2 years that adults were struggling too, we probably had it worse. And now all of our parents are telling us, you can't sit at home all day and play video games. You cannot be on your phone all day. Our teachers want to take our phones and not allow us to use TikToks. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, our phones are probably a distraction, but they don't have to be if you teach us how to use them. If you show us, if you allow us the space to do the TikToks, if you give us an hour a day to do a TikTok, I'm pretty sure a majority of your youth will go to class and do what they want to do and do what you want them to do. But you're trying to figure out what's not working for them, but you're not asking them. We're asking, and not to say that our parents don't matter, but you want us to go to school and us to perform the best way we can for this, to be us around this table, and we don't feel like, we know what we're doing. A majority of our experiences are in the house.
I think everybody heard that. I hope they heard it loud and clear. Many of us who have connections who are still working with schools in multiple levels, all the way through college, every professor, every teacher, every nursery school has said, our children are calling us. They're asking for help. And yet we don't hear them. We look straight ahead like everything's the same. We have to change the way we educate. We have to change the way we listen to them and hear them. Because if we don't, we will get the same thing over and over again. It's everything that we do in education has to change, and it has all these years. But it's important that we keep all of our ears open, right? And we hear what the young people are saying to us. And they're saying it very clearly. And if we can't hear that we got a problem, not the kids. So I think that's really critical. I think the data that you guys have given us has caused much pause for us. We are so happy to have this data, because now we can actually start to dissect, what are we doing? And are we doing it in the right way? It's not, the data is not the issue. It's what are we doing with it? And how do we analyze it in a way that's necessary for all of us to understand? Gary, did you have your hand up several times and you didn't have a chance to talk? Oh, okay. I just remembered. Did I call Gary? But I mean, when we look at the dip in 2020, what was happening? We need to look at that. As we see the numbers going up, why are they going up so fast? As we look at the kids that are being referred to services, are those services the ones that we really need now? Because they're different kids. Are they going to work? As we look at how we go in the projection of sharing this data, we've got to share the data in a way that's positive, that says, now we know where we are, we have a baseline. And the only thing we can do is take that baseline and go farther with the work that we're doing. So I thank you so much for this. Well, first of all, I want bigger print, okay? I'm bringing a microscope, a magnifying glass for these. But the things that you gave us now, I hope we separate them and give them to the specific committees that are related to those issues, because this is a good baseline for us to work in many of the things that we're talking about. And we look at the ages, we look at the genders, and we look at the locations. I hate to say it, but there are several school districts that are struggling out there that we have to help. And I know there are some school districts that have such high number of missing teachers They can't, we can't expect them to teach if they don't have any teachers. So we got to figure out as a state, how do we get teachers back into the classroom and give them that support that they need so they can go back and do their jobs? And how do we get the nurses in there? And how do we get the social workers in there? We can't just say, okay, go hire 100 social workers, go hire another 200 nurses. Who are we talking to? We should be talking to ourselves. How am I going to help that process change? It's not going to happen when we pass it on. I say to my husband all the time, you don't have a secretary, okay? If you want to change, you better get out there and work on it yourself, not me. So I think all of us need to think about that and say, what am I doing to make the change much clearer and much more evidence-based, solid, because we're starting to collect that. So with that, yes, Rep. Porter.
I just wanted to piggyback real quick because of what this student just shared with us. It's what I always say, the people closest to the problems are closest to the solutions, but oftentimes furthest from the power. So thank you for speaking power, because that goes a long way. So when we're talking about sharing this data, I think that we also need to make sure it's a must that we share it with these students, that we bring them to the table and say, explain to us. Because my inclination is to ask you to explain it, but then I caught myself and I'm like, no, we need to ask these kids, explain this to us. What's going on? Why are the numbers like this? Rep. Walker asked about the numbers going up and down in probation. We need to be talking to these kids in probation because they can tell us what's going on and they can tell us what we need. We don't have to guess at this. So I just want to, really emphasize that. And I salute you. I really do applaud you because it takes courage to do what you're doing today. So thank you for being at the table. Let's just make sure that we make it worth her while being at the table. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Everybody got so wrapped up in that. I just reached over to Mark. I said, where are we on the program? I can't even find it. My notes, I've got so many little notes here. Erica, go, take two. Go right ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you, Representative Walker. As we move forward this afternoon, this is kind of the midway point, and I just wanted to reemphasize something that Erica shared. We are planning a series of smaller, shorter spotlight presentations starting in December. Our co-chair of the diversion work group has offered to come and present on the diversion system. And then we'll have a series of presentations from state agencies. And we're also trying to coordinate a presentation for next spring to spotlight some of the programs that you may have seen in previous slides this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Maurice Rees from the Office of Policy and Management, for the second part of our presentation.
Thank you very much, Brian, and good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to present today. So the last time we were in front of you all was, I believe, November of last year, where we provided an update on the equity dashboard. Kevin and I are excited to, again, provide you an update and show you all of the work that's been done over the last year. And we're excited about not only the work, but the collaboration between multiple agencies and members of the JJPOC on this project. But first, we thought it would be great to provide some historical context as to where the equity dashboard idea came from. And from that, that began with the IL Youth recommendations back in 2019, and to provide some information on why certain metrics were chosen or measures were chosen for the equity dashboard. And we were lucky enough to recruit Hector to do that for us. So he will be presenting the first 3 slides, and I'll use the clicker for him, but I'll turn it over to Hector now.
Thank you, Maurice. So in brief history, this body has always been interested in disparities around race and ethnicity. And for a long time, OPM had done work and outsourced 7-year studies that would look at decision points throughout the system. They were called the spectrum reports, and they would highlight where some of these disparities are. The latest version of this type of a look was a collaboration with Council of State Government, in which I believe OPM was able to competitively compete with the rest of the nation for technical assistance on improving outcomes for youth. So the IO youth sort of study and work. That set of work was housed in all three branches of government, the legislature, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. And one of the recommendations as they reviewed the data was that we should have an externally facing dashboard. They identified several metrics where they saw disparities at different decision points throughout the system. And I'm not going to read through them on the slide, but you can see where they were. And that is where we have prioritized. And, you know, when in 2020, when the first question came up of who was going to own this set of work, it took quite a while to decide within the three agencies who would publish this publicly facing dashboard. Finally, OPM stepped up and they became the face of this, go back one, this dashboard. And in work with this committee, the data sharing committee and the red committee, for the better part of 2 years, we've sort of wrangled and fought. And it has been a long, long process. But I will say, you know, the amount of work that we've accomplished in the last 6 months has been tremendous. We have been meeting on a bi-weekly basis, bringing, you know, community expertise to try to make sure that the data that we're presenting is digestible. I'm not sure we're still there, but I think it's an important set of data, and it's something that we're working towards. The one piece I feel, and I'm sure all the other members of this committee is going to feel, is that the dashboard won't be robust enough. And I have assurances from Kevin and Maurice that, you know, this is just the start of the process. And where we started was doing a crosswalk of where do we actually have data? Where can we pull it in? And then how can we make it publicly facing in a way that is usable? And I think, you know, you should be excited within the first set. In talking to the team, they think that they can publish the next couple sets of data in a much faster pace. And then, you know, we continue to encourage them to build out the rest of the system, not just focusing on disparities, but everything that you've seen here, always with that lens. And I think that, you know, the team's up to that task. But if you want to see, you know, the initial where we started crosswalking numerators and denominators and trying to figure out how we were going to find those proxies for these measures, that was the first set of work that was done. And I think, you know, we're in a good place. And now I can turn it over to Kevin, and he can give you all the technical expertise and show you where we're at.
Thank you, Hector, and good afternoon, everyone. Rep Walker, Undersecretary Pelka, and everyone assembled both in the room and also on Zoom. Won't forget about you all. My name is Kevin Neary. I am the Research Unit Director for the Criminal Justice Policy and Planning Division at OPM. And I can thank you, clicker, perfect. I wanted to pick up the presentation here at this point because this is about the time in which both Maurice and I kind of got involved in the development of this dashboard. So when we arrived, a lot of the work on the dashboard to that point had been kind of identifying the prioritization and the sources of data for the dashboard. So the next phase was really, okay, how do we get a home to publish this information, and then how do we start implementing it? So this is where we sort of developed the project team, and I kind of have taken on somewhat of a technical role, but I speak for a number of people who've been involved in that project team, especially over the last year, in terms of getting us to this point. So two key decisions early on were made, again, that for a lot of the prioritized measures, the initial data would be coming from the judicial branch. And as you can see, from Brian Sperry's presentation earlier, there is a number of data that they maintain as administrators of the system. So it was a natural data fit for them to be the primary data source to begin with. And then OPM would do what we can do to host the public dashboard. So In addition to our own division, OPM also has a data and policy analytics unit, which, as some of you may know, hosts Connecticut's open data platform. And they are kind of a natural fit in terms of providing technical expertise. And we have brought them into our project team and have been an invaluable resource along the way. And then another step was also taking advantage of some Bureau of Justice statistics funding that is available for units such as mine across the different states. And we were able to get some grant funding as well to support not just the dashboard development, but more so the ability to exchange data between the branches over a number of years. So that has been another piece of the puzzle and kind of providing a build out for this. So with that step, last time we were here, and this was actually virtually, but we did present a quick update at that time. And about that point in the project development, we had kind of settled on a 2-track approach. One would be very technical, kind of going along with the infrastructure, which I'll provide kind of a quick run through. It's probably the driest part of the presentation, if I'm being honest. And then the other part was the kind of dashboard design. How would the dashboard kind of adapt and visualize these measures and provide information for public consumption? So we presented at the time some next steps that we had identified. And just wanted to say that many of these steps that we presented last November have actually been completed at that time. And it's a testament to the 2 tracks that we've been on and have been working through, especially in the design side over the last 6 months. So as I mentioned, I will focus quickly on the technical process. And again, this is a very complicated diagram, but it just goes to show you that while we do live in a data-rich environment, when you're going to build a public-facing tool, there are a lot of considerations about how you get that data from the data source, what transformations you need to make to it to get it to a state that you can visualize it, and then how do you actually get that up on the web and in a kind of website that can provide additional context and information. So those were kind of the key issues that we were working towards: exchanging the data being one, and then transforming it for visualization, and then hosting it. And over the last 11 months, we've made a lot of key technical accomplishments. We had a technical working group that met primarily with the judicial branch on a monthly basis. And we talked through a lot of these technical issues, both with our OPM's DAPA team, the CJPPD team as well, and the judicial branch. And we have settled on a number of things. The biggest kind of takeaway is that over time, we would like to update the dashboard on a quarterly basis. So data will be made available kind of following the end of each quarter within a calendar year, and hopefully up onto the site at that point. And then the other big thing that we had to consider was, as you get into some of these specific measures, the number of cases gets very small, and you want to make sure that you protect potentially individuals from being re-identified in certain areas. So we had to make sure that we had specific steps in there to both keep the idea that there is information, but protect privacy of individuals that may be there. So we are using for the dashboard aggregate data that does come from the judicial branch. And we have taken steps to make sure that if there's any number of cases that is below 5, that information will not be present to be seen. So the last piece is that we will host this dashboard in Tableau, and then it will be embedded within a site that's run by Socrata, which is the platform that runs the open data portal. And so at this point, I will turn it over to Maurice to talk a bit more about our kind of design work group process.
Thank you, Kevin. After last year's presentation in November, it became very clear to Kevin and I that we needed to do a better job of engaging the JJPOC community as a whole to get involved in this project. We wanted to be able to take advantage of the tremendous people in this room, both physically and virtually, with your extensive and unique knowledge that you all have through your work with the juvenile justice system, and as evidenced by this meeting here today. It became essential to us that the design ultimately represent this room's diverse voices and perspectives. So what we did earlier this year is we did reach out to Tao, Erica, and Brittany, gave us some tremendous advice on how to encourage engagement from other areas of the JJPOC community. They assisted us in building this design group that Kevin talked about earlier, and were instrumental in the work that we've been doing over the last 6 months with help with coordinating meetings, engagement themselves, and giving us hints and tips on how to push this process forward. So I would like to thank individuals right now who participated in the meeting, the red chairs, obviously Hector and Dr. Gordon, who I believe may have been traveling today, that he actually volunteered Hector to present for us. So I thank you for that. The judicial branch, Brian Hill has provided us with advice. Brian Sperry and Peter have been essential in the technical and design process. Scott Gall's DAPA group at OPM, both Pauline and Coral have provided us expertise. They themselves have done what we are trying to do, being successful in implementing dashboards that are used statewide currently. And I want to send some individual special thanks to Ileana, Tennille, Tiana, and Shantae, and also Dr. Cooper for attending meetings, volunteering their time, input, and ideas. It's been invaluable to our success over the last year. Included in that, what we wanted to focus on at the meetings themselves was trying to reach consensus with the group that we had put together. Kevin did a lot of this work as essentially the point guard of the meetings, making sure that everyone was involved, that we created a environment that was conducive to everyone feeling comfortable with sharing their ideas, input, and suggestions. And I think that's been vital to what we've done over the last 6 months. With that, and making people understand that we're taking their recommendations and ideas seriously, we wanted to set up a nimble and efficient development cycle. So with the bi-weekly meetings that we had set up, and when we would get recommendations or ideas about a certain visualization or design piece, Kevin would go back with his team, and by the next meeting, we'd have alternatives to present to the group to show them that we were trying to take their feedback to heart and put it into the actual tool itself to so that it became a better product throughout the weeks that we worked on this. I remember a period where we went back and forth about stacked bars, and I never thought I'd talk so much about stacked bars, but it was quite the three meetings. But I think we landed in a good place, and you'll see that when the demonstration is done. But really, for us, it was all about making sure everyone felt heard and a part of the process, because we wanted the final product to be a representation of everyone's ideas. And lastly, we worked on implementing a review process, both for the text and design, where we involved judicial, TAO, and the co-chairs of the RED work group. So again, we want this to be a collaborative process so that everyone who has a stake in this dashboard, we are using, well, you will see we're using judicial data for the first measure. The IOU recommendation was that this equity dashboard would help guide the RED groups, work groups work, and help them provide policy recommendations and with data-driven and evidence-based knowledge. So we want to make sure that Hector and Dr. Gordon are definitely happy with the product that we're producing. This slide is a quick static shot of 3 other states that have similar equity dashboards. And we wanted to show it not only to give you some context as we're about to demo the website that we've produced, but also to encourage you to go visit those websites and see what they have produced. And if it produces any ideas that you think could be helpful to us, we'd love for you to provide us that feedback. So, and lastly, as we've talked a lot about collaboration during this this meeting process, I did want to share a couple highlights of the things that have come out of those meetings and that collaboration. The first being, again, I should say, making sure that the RED work groups equity monitoring needs are being met by the dashboard. That's one of the highest priorities we've had when we started this process, Kevin and I. The second was the group agreed that we would start with focusing on one decision point for each page. This way we could provide the context to the data that was being presented. And to speed up the process where we could go live with a website, we also wanted to focus on one measure. And you will see that shortly when we demo the tool. But this will allow us not only to get the website live quicker, but provide a foundation for building additional measures into the website in the future. Both Hector and Kevin have talked about making the information user-friendly and accessible to a wide audience. And that was a key point of reference for everyone that joined those calls. And lastly, we view this dashboard as a gateway for others that don't necessarily know a lot about the Connecticut juvenile justice system, where they can come to the dashboard and be pushed to additional resources throughout the state for agencies and organizations that are doing wonderful work throughout the state. So I think it'll benefit a lot of us in this room in many different ways. And I will pass it back to Kevin.
Is that? No, okay. Okay.
Just bear with me 1 second. This is
Sure.
maybe the one difference between doing this online versus in person. You have to switch people to do this, not just screens. So I'm going to try to walk through this, and hopefully this is showing for everyone, both in the room and on Zoom. And this is a demo version of the dashboard. This is starting, as Maurice mentioned, with the initial measure that we intend to launch. And we'll talk a bit more about the timeline, but just for everyone's benefit, we hope to launch this in early 2023 with this measure specifically, and then build out additional ones in the months to follow. And this one is the delinquent referral measure. Now, I know we did just hear a bit about that from the presentation preceding ours, so I think this is perhaps a nice complement to that, to get a sense of what this dashboard will show. As you can see, this blue area here is the kind of main navigation bar that will be consistent throughout all the measures that will eventually be built out here. And it will not only allow you to kind of users to see what kind of key decision points have been identified for this dashboard, but also we plan to build out perhaps some hover over text that will appear that may provide a kind of a quick understanding of what that measure can provide about the point in this juvenile justice system. So this will be consistent across the pages. And again, this one is the delinquent referral page in particular. And I'm going to try to get this all in view. So give me just 1 second here. Touchy on the mouse, but I think I can do it. Okay, so this first page is really this first area is to provide really users who come to this page with an understanding and an overview of where across the state youth who have been referred are coming from, and both the quarterly breakdown by race and ethnic categories as captured in the data. So what you can see here, and this is showing all of the years that are currently in this draft dashboard data set, which is 2019 to early 2022. Again, this is draft data, not final. So this was not necessarily fully verified and vetted information yet. When it will be public, we hope to add full 2022 data. But for now, it only has partial 2022 data, the first quarter in there. But what users will be able to see is the resident town of the youth that have been referred. And if you hover over, again, you'll see the kind of quantity by the specific towns. They will also be able here to switch to the year. So if folks are interested in looking at a given year, for instance, 2020, and it may take a second because it's been up for a little bit. Sometimes when it's been up, it has to refresh itself. There we go. So you can see that it will adapt both the map and then also below, and you can see the quarterly information, and that will change given the year that is selected here. So you can see it by year, or again, you can see across all of the years that will be in the dashboard. And then for some reason in this view, the labels are hidden, but they also appear if you hover over the specific bars. So again, this is to provide that kind of entry overview of system-wide kind of where are referrals coming from and what that volume looks like quarterly by the different race and ethnic categories. And again, that's across both genders. Now, the key to this site is, again, understanding equity issues at these decision points. So this is the next section that really allows a better understanding of that. And hopefully this is showing for everyone, and try to get it so you can see most of the, I'll scroll down a bit so people can see the lower chart, but I'll focus up here first. Here there will be kind of two main filters that will be available. First is gender, and the second will be town. It's not enabled yet, so I will be showing things at the statewide level, but users will be able to eventually click on towns and see town-specific understanding of both the estimated populations and the volumes of delinquent referrals, and then a referral rate per 1,000 youth. And I'll get into that in a second. The other filter here is gender. So you can see both male and female, or in this case, total. This actually is enabled. So if you click on that, that will change specifically to the gender selected. So again, you'll be able to look at it not just across all the youth, but also by specific male or female identified youth. This area here kind of provides the estimates that you can think of that as sort of in a given area, in this case, statewide, or if you were to select a town, it would change to show the town, but it gives you the estimated populations in that area. This comes from the American Community Survey data of 2018, so census data that has been estimated. And then here on this side, we see the counts, the volumes of delinquent referrals by year. Again, that will change by area. In this case, we're showing statewide, but you see not only the overall total, but then you can also see the quantity by the different race and ethnic categories within the data. And if you hover over it, you will also see the percentage there to give you an idea of the percentage in addition to the actual number. And then this third piece, and this is a key for understanding equity kind of considerations, is the referral rate per 1,000 youth. So this is a way of trying to standardize the number across different population sizes so that you can get a sense of, say there were 1,000 youth in the area, how many referrals would there have been for that category? So again, this is at the statewide level. So it's based on the kind of overall volume across the state. But if users hover over this as well, they get some information about how that rate is specifically calculated. So trying to give people who are engaging with it a bit of understanding about what they're seeing in here. And again, as more years are included into this data, more years will be able to be seen. Again, right now we're showing complete years in this area. So hopefully when we launch in early 2022, we will have both another year of 2022 data to include within this tool. And then the last piece I will just kind of mention is below this is there are some additional information for those who are coming to it and maybe not as familiar with looking at data, we wanted to give them a sense of what they can see within this, what kind of views, just some guidance, and then a little bit about the dashboard. But there will be up here, and I apologize for scrolling so quickly, there will be a link to both information about the dashboard, similar to some of the content you heard today, and then also eventually additional resources. And that's something we'll be building out with our various stakeholders in the months ahead. So with that, I'm going to kind of pause and just give Hector, I didn't know if you had any additional comments you wanted to make. Again, you've been a key voice along the way here, and this is a tool specifically for your use amongst others. So
I would just say, if you don't like how we presented it, blame Ileana. She's been at all the meetings, and she had a chance to correct us if we were doing it wrong.
And I will thank Ileana for all of her contributions and the many other voices, and also putting up with my voice on a bi-weekly basis. So they've had to endure me a lot. So I thank them. At this point, I would like to turn it back to the last couple of slides, if I can. I think I can just click here. And I'll just continue to use Brittany's computer if she doesn't mind. Is it not showing? Okay. That one. Okay, hopefully that's showing to everyone on Zoom. Perfect. Okay, and I will try to be mindful of our remaining time here, so I'll move through these quick. But again, this is a somewhat conservative timeline, but just wanted to give everyone a sense of where we see the coming year, essentially. The first couple of points should kind of show where we've been over the past year. Obviously, we are today at the initial draft dashboard demonstration. In the future, again, in early 2023, we hope to launch. That date is set somewhat dependent on when the data are ready from the judicial branch, particularly with the full 2022 year data. So that actual launch date will probably be sometime toward the end of January, February, depending on that data availability. So from there, we hope to build out the additional measures. And again, I think with the sort of considerations that have gone into this first measure that we've demoed today, and the kind of template that we have in working through those considerations, I think we'll be able to build out a number of these other prioritized measures fairly quickly. But we would really love to have all of the measures up through the end of 2023, and then work on identifying other sources of data and other measures that are of interest to stakeholders. So that is the roadmap ahead. And I think in the, if someone could just hit the clicker, I guess it's back on the clicker. Working. Nope. There we go. Okay, so just immediate next steps. Again, we have to finalize some of the text you saw. So the text on the dashboard that you saw, that is draft text, but we are going to be working through it in the review process with our stakeholders before we publish it. So that is a key piece. And then again, waiting for that additional data. And then we do plan to maintain, not quite on a biweekly schedule, but continuing to regularly meet with the working group that we had about design to talk through those other measures. So as long as they are continuing to willingly to engage with us, we will gladly take use of their time to continue to build out this tool. So that is our roadmap for the future. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Undersecretary Pelka for some closing remarks.
So much to everybody for your hard work on this. A lot of work went into today's presentation. Kevin, Maurice, Brian, and all the members of the work group, RAD committee chairs, community expertise work group, so many partners involved. I think it's a perfect compliment to receive the outstanding presentation from our judicial branch partners ahead of time. You can count on every year receiving updates on the data analysis, as well as the spotlights along the way. But what the equity dashboard will allow is a focus on the demographic information we need to track throughout our juvenile justice system, from entry to all the way through. And it's also going to make the information at the fingertips for any consumer who wants to review the information. We'll benefit so much from Brian Sperry walking through his analysis, but along the way, people will be able to log in, do drop-down menus, do their own cuts of the data they may want to see, and track it along the way in a user-friendly way, so they can have that information to explore key questions they may have. And finally, it'll be more a timely delivery of information on a quarterly basis. As it's uploaded, you'll get more real-time information about changes and indicators happening in the juvenile justice system. So it really is a breakthrough moment done through an acknowledgement of the importance of remaining laser focused on the demographic composition of these populations in the juvenile justice system. So once this goes live, it'll provide that solid foundation, but enable a scaffolding all the way up for additional pages of more information along the way. So I think this is a breakthrough moment for the committee, and it's a credit to all the hard work that's been done to get us here, and more to come in the coming weeks, as Kevin mentioned in the presentation. So thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I want to echo what my co-chair has said. I just sat here for a while and just thought about where we started back in 2007 and how difficult it was just to get the number of kids that we had in detention centers, and how difficult it was to find out what services were being done, and how difficult it was to find how many kids came back to the system. And look at us. We're making those milestones now. We're making those changes. It's really important that we reflect on that, because of the fact that we have made so much and we've done so much to share that information with the public. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to say that, you know, we've got these secret things going on, or we're talking about our children, and it's all of our children. And I thank you all for this. I mean, it really makes me excited to say that we will have a dashboard that shows everything that we're doing. And we're not saying that we're doing anything that is perfect, but we are doing something, and we're sharing that information. You guys, it's great, and thank you, Ileana. You didn't know you had those skills, did you? That's what everybody has in this committee. They all have specific skills that are just great for the building of this good juvenile justice system in Connecticut. We're not perfect, but we sure are trying hard to get it better. And I wish everybody understood that more and more, because as we talk, we've got to look at the positive, that what we're doing and how hard we're doing. We're not going to get there overnight, but we're going to get there, and we're going to continually get there. So I thank everybody for this. And let's see, when's our next secret date? November 17th. So I look forward to hearing what's going on with the committees and where we are. And I'm going to emphasize, please take a look at that data that we got. Look at that data and use it in those committees now, and let's bring it in the forefront. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And it was really great to be here and see you. It was really nice, because I actually saw people's faces and everything, and I watched to see who was listening and who wasn't too. Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening. Have a safe trip home.